Welcome to Podcast IRC, conversations with Indigenous scholars to advance understandings and gain new knowledge, hosted by the Indigenous Research Center at Salish Kootenai College.
That song was composed by a man named Trunson Big Hair from Crow Agency. It's called a Crow hymn, right? We call them Crow hymns, but in Crow it's just Chiwagiwaraha, which is Malacha, which is like just prayer song, right? Malacha or Balacha is to sing, and Chiwagi or Chiwagam is to pray. Chiwagi Malacha. It's an interesting story behind this song. Is his wife passed away, and he said the song came to him. So it's the translation is just the creator or Akbartia Gada, which is like God or the one who does everything, or it just says, allow me to be a part of good days. They say that you're kind, or please remember me, and then it says they say that you're kind. So, and that's all it says, so it's funny to me how this song is considered like a Christian song, but how it was composed or how it was obtained is really more in the older fashion of Crow songs, or even just any kind of tribal song. So I just thought this song would be a good way to kind of kick things off, because for one, I like it. It's kind of considered the Crow hymn hit. It's like, and only in Indian country can you have like funeral songs be hits. There's kind of like the faves, and so this song is pretty well known among the Crow, even among some non-Crow people. It's just kind of it's pretty well known, and Tronson's still alive, so he's still with us. So it's kind of neat that to have a song so well known and have the person who composed it be around. So
did you say that when he was gifted this song, or the song was visited him? You say it was in the 50s?
No. I'm actually not quite sure when it's when his wife had passed away. Within the last 20 years. Yeah, I didn't.
That's right. Okay.
Trunson was probably born in like the late 30s, early 40s. So.
Okay. I got some messages crossed there.
You did your math wrong.
I didn't carry the zero.
Yeah, you didn't cross multiply and solve for X.
I think I was thinking of the remainder.
Yeah.
Too much.
God, the remainder.
Generally, just round that in or round it down.
Yeah. To the nearest decimal on these.
Remember when you used to just put a R? You write the number and put a R? Like there's something else there, but we don't know.
Hey, Aaron. So I'm just like, I'm really curious about this because, my great aunt just passed on. And so during her services, they were singing hymns, and it got me thinking about how the Christians came in, or the missionaries or whatever, and they kind of integrated that into our culture, and so we still hold it. But it kind of is fascinating to me that the same thing kind of happened over in Crow, because I feel like the culture in Crow is a lot more ingrained to each other, and so can you explain, I guess, like how those two things came together, like especially with the song, because you said the song came to him after his wife died. So how does an old hymn come to someone, I guess, is what I'm wondering.
Yeah, so the difference I think between the flathead res here versus Crow is that what we call Crow hymns in Crow are composed songs, are they're original, like they're all original tunes. The majority of Salish hymns
Mm-hmm.
are reworked Catholic songs, if I'm not mistaken, right, Shandi? There are a handful of kind of original ones, though, right?
So the priests at that time during the mid 1800s, some of them was they actually composed these. The priests composed them and then fitted the Salish words to them. But there was a number of them that were hymns or what do they call them? There's another word for it that they call those. Not a dirge. What's a dirge anyway? It sounds like a dirty word. It's not a dirge. Isn't that like a? I don't even want to know. Not like those, but there were songs that already existed that they reworked.
Yeah,
but there were some traditional songs too, though.
That's what I was gonna bring up.
Yeah,
and they got kind of carried over, right?
Yeah,
they're kind of carried over in, like grandfathered in as hymns, but they pre-existed the church.
But the tune is old death songs or old victory songs or war dance songs in that manner. Yeah. And so that's what was not surprising, but when you're talking about that song, it's really like a reversal of what the priests were trying to do, indoctrinate the natives with their ways of thinking and doing through song. But the reverse happened in some cases where actually their songs got indigenized and the style. Yeah, and it's true. The style and even the mode of singing was really taken over by the natives. Europeans at that time couldn't replicate those in the manner in which they were.
For sure.
They were carried over. But hey, we got some guests here.
Yeah.
Right. Let's let Aaron go ahead and let us know what's going on here.
Well, I thought, for our breakout session, our back to school edition of the podcast.
Oh yeah, back to school.
Well, one theme that gets brought up in all of our podcasts is language, right? Native language and research native language in all facets of doing the work we do. And I had the pleasure of taking a course earlier in the summer, a Crow language course through the Language Consortium. So I got to meet Bob and then later I got to meet Will. So I thought they're pretty swell fellas. And
now, what is it? What did you say? I'm sorry. The Language what?
Conservancy.
Okay, let's just make sure.
What did I say?
You said consortium.
Oh, that's AHEC. That's a different thing. My bad. I'm sorry. Okay. So I thought, hey man, everybody asks me questions. I get messages on Instagram. I get people saying, hey, you guys should have an episode about language. And then I thought, man, what better than to have the Language Conservancy here, because not only have they done work in Crow, but they've worked with so many different tribes, and so they get to see what works, what doesn't work. And again, the importance of language. And my big question was, why they choose to do this type of work when they probably could have built houses or caught dogs or something, something that probably makes.
Did you say hot dogs?
Catch dogs.
Oh, catch dogs like a dog catcher.
Yeah, my dad said during the Crow elections, or during the campaigning, someone said, we'll have Eric be the housing director, my dad. And he said, I don't want to be the housing director. I just want to catch dogs. That's his way of saying no, I guess. So we have, of course we have the usual, we have Brenda and Sean Dean and Marty and Cammie I here, but our special guests are Bob Rao, right? Rue. Bob Rue and Will Maya. Maya. Okay. See, I cross multiplied when I should have I should have just took the two sums and went with it. My bad.
You got to stress the first, not the last vowel.
So how about we
First.
start with Bob there. You can introduce yourself, but really, I want to hear some thoughts on the song, man. That's kind of our Kickstarter to all our episodes is a song.
The song was awesome. Thank you for telling me the background of it. It was good to hear.
So So Bob, what do you do with the Language Conservancy? What is your role?
Well, what I've been doing for the past couple of years, probably 3 or 4 years, is working on this Crow dictionary. And it's been through several different stages. And right now we are getting ready to publish it in a couple of months. It's going to be pretty full blown. We've gone through this process called the Rapid Word Collection, which we've done with several languages. One of the first ones we did was with Crow, and that was 2 summers ago. What the Rapid Word Collection is it's a series of different semantic domains, probably close to 1,800 of them. And you break the community up into small groups of maybe 4 to 5 people, and you sit in rooms and you record all of this, and each group is given a certain semantic domain to work with, and the idea is to try to get through it in about 10 to 15 minutes because you want to move as fast as possible. And we do this over maybe a course of a week to ideally 2 weeks. And with each semantic domain that you have, it's kind of like a word association game where you try to think of as many words as possible in your language that would fit under that category. And then someone, at the time, the process at that time was we would have somebody like myself who is familiar with the language, jotting these words down as fast as possible on a piece of paper. And then you'd move on to the next domain. And then we bring all of this material back to Bloomington, and we try to, we have some intern transcribe all the handwritten stuff into a spreadsheet, and we have other interns cut all the audio, and it's like it just gives you months and months worth of just data processing after you do that.
Yeah.
So we're at the stage now where we've actually got all of that processed. We've got good spellings of most of it. We've broken down everything into its morphemic parts. And everything is based on, I should have said this originally, but everything is based on Father Randolph Greichik's dictionary, which he worked on himself. He's also inherited quite a bit of it from Hugh Matthews, who's a linguist who was on the reservation for many decades and just passed away a few months ago.
What was that name again?
Hugh Matthews.
Hugh Matthews,
yeah.
Okay.
And the person we work with mostly, who's thankfully still with us, is Father Randolph Greichik. Who is the priest at St. Charles Parish in Prior.
He's the prior pope.
He's the prior pope. Yeah.
Prior pope.
But everything we based a lot of it off of his, especially the morpheme breakdowns, off of his work that he's done on this. He's written for his PhD. He wrote a book called The Grammar of Crow, which is just really a great resource. Yeah. Anybody who's really interested in learning a language and has the time to kind of delve into that deep linguistic stuff should take up.
It's tough to read.
It's
yeah.
It's great bedtime reading if you have insomnia.
So
but it's good stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, I've learned a lot from it for sure. Yeah.
So this is one of the deals, and we'll give Will a chance here to introduce himself too. But the divide between linguists and the field of linguistics and the learner seems to be very vast.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even in just some of the terminology that you were mentioning here just now about the morphemes, morphology, those kind of things, it's
word parts.
Yeah. The average everyday listener may or may not understand what that means, or how that connects to language learning and preservation. So that's just something I wanted to note in this conversation. Not that it means anything, just thought of it. And let's hear from Will.
Oh, hi. So my name is Will May. I'm the Executive Director of the Language Conservancy. Glad to be here and look forward to talking with you all. It sounds like a super interesting conversation, and definitely appreciate that song ahead of time. That was absolutely so beautiful and reminded me of some of the Lakota honor songs. In fact, I almost thought I was trying to parse it for Lakota. That's how close it was, And it's so interesting just to hear that, and the feeling you get from that song is so powerful. And it's that kind of feeling that we hope, language learners can get to again, with their language, whether as a second language or eventually with their kids, being able to connect with that kind of feeling, that kind of cultural depth and emotion, and just that worldview is so palpable there. And it's wonderful that that gentleman is still alive, and that things are still alive in Crow, and there's still that opportunity to bridge the divide, so to say, between speakers and non-speakers. And that's what we see our work as, as really a bridge between generations, trying to take all that old material and make it accessible for young people, learners who, might be on their phone, or, don't have all the time to go to the classes, or, you know what I mean? There's so many things like that. And so that's fundamentally what we're trying to do, is, take the linguistics of it, do it accurately, but really just package it for a user that needs to use it in a modern world, and get that language back, and take it on their own, because it's you guys who are the language belongs to you, your generation. You guys need to get it and move forward with it.
Wait. What do you mean? What do you mean, you guys?
I mean,
I'm just teasing
the
you.
young generation. I'm an old guy. I'm not going to be learning Crow.
I'm just teasing.
You guys, let it pass. Let it turn.
I have a question though. Oh, go ahead.
Okay,
go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Because we're into it now. See how we snuck you? We this is a sneak attack podcast. We just snuck right into
Jerry Springer.
The topic. Yeah, we Jerry Springer. Jim.
Yeah. Who do we got on the mystery line?
Yeah. And Marty is not the father.
Yeah. Sorry, Marty.
Continue with your questions. Focus. Focus, you guys. Focus.
A guy named Jonathan Lear gave me that book. I inquired about that grammar book, and he said, you can have it. And and to be honest, like, I couldn't read it, but I knew Marty, he's always had an interest in that Father Randolph book. So when I got back from Chicago, I said, man, I know who I'm giving this to. And Marty got it. So that book traveled from Pryor, Montana to Chicago, Illinois, to Missoula, Montana. And I'm sure it's made a couple trips to Pryor again, right, Marty, you think?
Did he say yes?
Yeah,
he's a nonverbal communicator.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm used to the Zoom.
As you can see, mine has been really
look at Bob flexing.
Pretty well worn.
Yeah.
We could use it. We could stand to get a new one of these. Well, just bring that
it's
up.
like a $90 book, isn't it?
It's pretty expensive.
Yeah.
Maybe not 90, but it's close. Yeah.
40% of it goes to the Jesuit missionaries.
Yeah.
Just for doing the Lord's work still.
Yeah.
The language is doing the Lord's work.
We're just out here doing God's work,
Doing the Lord's work. Now, just for the listeners who don't know what's going on, what is this book again? Say the title.
It's A Grammar of Crow by Randolph Greicher.
Okay, and it's available where? Just in case someone
wants
to purchase. You can buy it
off Amazon. You can buy it at the Trading Post or Crow Agency.
Okay, so it's a pretty well-known book. That's what you're saying.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think among linguists,
it is a linguistic book.
Or
among preservationists, most Crow people have seen the book. Marty's the only Crow person I know that owns the book.
Right.
So, but my question, my thought is I'm curious as to how something like the Language Conservancy would start. Like, how would it begin? Because I'm assuming Will or Bob, you guys are non-native, right?
Right.
So in language, preservation is such a specific field to the revitalization of culture, but in the manner in which you guys do it, it seems to be unique. Obviously, I don't know all the language preservation methods, but it does seem to be unique. And it seems to be like it produces right away, like the amount of material you guys have and the functionality of how you do your guys' work. It's out there, like it's just there, like it's easy to find, it's easy to get to. It's not like a seat, you don't have to have like a members only jacket, you know. So I'm I'm curious to know how this all started.
Right. Yeah. So, we're always, again, gearing it towards, accessibility and trying to make sure language is available in every possible way, whether it's an online dictionary or textbooks or apps or all of that. Because there's, learning the language is hard enough. If you had to, go through all these hoops to get to it, you're going to discourage a lot of people from trying to learn it. We don't want that to happen at all. The story about how Language Conservancy started actually goes back to the 90s, early 90s, when I was working and studying at a tribal college in South Dakota, at a Lakota college, and wanting to learn Lakota myself, and I thought it would be interesting as something on the side. It was just so difficult to learn, and there was not any materials. And the more I got involved with the community there, it just was pretty clear that language was like the missing piece there for the community and for young people who were trying to learn it. I mean, there was a real sincere desire for that. And eventually, when I was in grad school, I did some projects on it, and eventually that morphed into a organization that was developing materials for Lakota, and that became known as Lakota Language Consortium. And within a few years of that, the Language Conservancy evolved because, frankly, there was so much, demand for the kinds of materials that were happening for Lakotas that other languages were requesting them too, and that's how Language Conservancy started. Also, as a nonprofit organization with a majority, Indigenous board, and very much geared towards serving the communities, serving the needs of the communities, and it's just kind of grown from there. And again, we're very unique. We're unique in terms of how we started, because we started with a real need, from the community, a desire from the elders to pass on the language, and that just when that gets combined with some people who have some technical and other kinds of skills, and really it's a team effort bringing languages back. The whole thing just starts to kind of snowball, and now we work with over 40 languages, U.S., Canada, Australia, Mexico, and it's just we're just trying to replicate the success that we're having, and again, serving the communities and trying to kind of move that needle as best we can. Time is of the essence, and that's another issue. So
interesting. Yeah, around here, and I know in a lot of neighboring tribes, that was one of the seemed like one of the big waves of language revitalization was this really massive amount of work in producing material. So we've seen a lot of things come out of that, like children's books, dictionaries, a lot of recordings and lesson plans, but none of that really translated into a level of fluency among the language learners. And I think one of the biggest issues in all that was some people felt like, well, we're putting a lot of time and a lot of money into something that doesn't seem to be working. Certainly it worked to a degree where it preserved, a lot of the syntax and the grammar associated with the language, but it never really translated into an effective tool to, I guess, translate into a level of fluency. So I don't know if you guys have had experience that or see that as a common issue or not. And I'd like to know what your guys' thoughts are on that.
Yeah, and I think that was, again, you hit the nail on the head. People have been trying to teach and learn indigenous languages now since the early 70s, when it was kind of pretty much opened up that you can now teach and learn these languages. But, until the mid 90s and actually until the early 2000s, there was little or no success in that. And so people were actually feeling like maybe this language isn't even learnable, or teachable, right? And that's not true. And, once you bring, the all of these other techniques, like the communicative style, the latest, methods of learning languages, and that's what we're doing. The crazy thing is, a lot of the stuff that we're using now for indigenous languages is being used to teach English in countries like China and all these other things. There's been this huge advancement in language teaching technologies and techniques that's so effective, so much better than it was, 20 or 30 years ago. And so, ironically, we're using those same, methods that are being used to kind of expand English to try and bring back indigenous languages. And so we're kind of bringing to bear all of that. Plus, you got now apps and you've got dictionaries that are online, and you can bring the full suite of, audio, video to it. And so even though we're in a time crunch, we're able to leverage technology like you couldn't do 20 or 30 years ago either. And so it's like the perfect time to do this type of work.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, and the beauty I see in my short little experience with these guys is how their material is presented and how the work is being done seems to be void of tribal politics, which is a real issue in Indian country and trying to learn language. There's all these cultural politics involved in what we do, but it's kind of cool. When I heard the stories of the rapid word collection from my uncle Dan Odelk, who's passed away now, he would say like, he said they didn't even care. He's like, if you say the word, they write it down. There was no like arguing over, no, that's not the way you say it. If someone says it a different way, well, write them both down, And I know in anthropology, we talk about language variation and vocabulary variation, and like that's important for speech pattern and speech variation and all these things in language. And I was like, man, that's cool, because before it seemed like you could get caught in these hangups about, no, that's not the way my grandma says it, or that's not the way. And it was like, well, they're probably both right,
Right.
So.
Right.
Yeah, it's very true. I've run across that quite a bit with Crow, but with other languages as well, where especially I think I ran across it with Hidatsa because of the lake that split up all the communities. People are isolated from one another, and different dialects and different words, come out of that. And one person has a way of saying one word because that's how their grandmother said it on this side of the lake, and someone lives on the other side of the lake, and they came up with a different word. And people stick by that, and they just have to realize, I think, that there's both words are valid.
Yeah.
And it does happen with Crow, but not quite. I just don't find the animosity, I think, among people, among Crow, about their language. They're kind of accepting of different ways to say things.
Right.
I don't know what explains that. Maybe Aaron, you would have some insight into that.
Man, that's a tough one, because living here on the Flathead now for as long as I have, I see it here too, and I've seen it in other places, and I think I don't know. In some cases, the third party seems to be able to be the referee of those politics. So in a way,
like I think that's true.
An institution like the consortium or the conservancy, it can kind of filter through that and find what's I don't want to say filter through it and find the truth, but I'm just saying,
well, why not?
It seems like it's like neutral ground, right? So it seems like that third party method of people doing this work seems to help some of those politics. to some degree. And unfortunately, like, we still have people who need validation in certain instances. And that's just the way Indian country is now. So hopefully work like this will start changing the culture of language preservation, because it's an early discipline. It's young. And
Mm-hmm.
so there's still growing pains, you know, in all of
Right.
it. And so hopefully Native people will see, like, all language is good, right? Whether it's being, I don't necessarily think a lot of these terms are being said wrong or anything when it comes to this. I just think it's communities and influenced by their elders and things like that. So once we get past that, I think we
One
should.
thing I have heard people talk about in Crow, because I definitely have more experience with the Crow community than any other, is that older people and sometimes younger people will complain about how much slang has grown into the language over the years. And it's funny because I didn't, me coming, as Aaron, as you say, is kind of an outsider and just totally objective about this. We've, over the past several months, we've just been breaking down all these words and thinking about them and analyzing them. And we're finding that a lot of, especially suffixes and certain types of morphemes that are really common are actually kind of a slangy way to say things. And we never thought about that. And that's something we've learned a lot. And there's just, it doesn't mean that it's wrong because it's probably what you're going to hear. But we are also learning that there's more of a fundamental word behind that.
So my thinking behind this, because this slang argument is used as a deterrent to learn language sometimes, and I've even heard that on many different reservations in Indian communities, where it's like, well, if you're not going to learn it, don't learn it at all. I really believe deep down, I'd rather see 20 Native kids speaking their language in slang than speaking English in slang.
Oh, sure.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, whether it's slang or whether it's not, you could always teach a kid how to speak their language properly if they already are speaking it in slang. That's a way better head start than to try to teach them the King's English right away. You know, like, naturally, that's the best, right? I mean, from birth.
To speak to that, as well as, like, I think a lot of elders, they don't do it purposely, but they can intimidate younger learners by sometimes telling them that they're not speaking good. You're not speaking good Crow, or even laughing at them, and it's just I think it can be a real deterrent, and I think people need to just know that kind of accept how they're talking, but also maybe gently try to teach them the more fundamental word, because it's best it's really best to learn the fundamental first and then go from there in any type of discipline, whether it's learning language or painting or writing a novel.
Yeah, for sure. But I grew up in a time in Crow where there was still a large majority of people in my grade, my classes, that spoke Crow, right?
Right.
Whether it be a slang version of Crow or not, they were speaking Crow, but because of what they perceived either as bullying or anything, I guess I can't say I was bullied or anyone like that, but people laugh when things are funny, man. Like, and sometimes you do say funny stuff. I mean, it's like, I don't think it's meant to be malicious all the time, but for sure, it's like, there can be a tactful way of correcting.
I guess that's kind of what I'm getting at. You want to correct people. You want to. You obviously want to try to teach the fundamental, but you don't want to intimidate or turn somebody off or belittle them, So,
well, there was a time, a little story. This is actually involving this reservation here, and I won't say any names, but I seen two men speaking Salish in a grocery store, and I brought it up to someone later that I knew who had spoke Salish, and they said, "Oh, them two, those guys don't know how to speak Salish." But I stood there for 30, 40 seconds listening to him talk. I didn't hear no English.
I know.
So I was like,
It's
all
just
right,
a
man, well,
common thing to hear.
they're
Yeah,
doing a hell of a job of faking it
Right.
because but what I'm thinking is that's the thought. They're speaking a slang, and I'm still thinking, man, we're at a point in language preservation where it's like, well, I almost would take anything, you know?
Yeah. I'm wondering what Brenda, Marty, or Camia's experience is in that regard in your
Man, I always
language
think
learning.
it's pretty hard, and like Bob was saying, people are pretty harsh when you try or when you don't pronounce it right or when you don't get the right phlegm behind it or the right clicks or the
Say
what I'm
phlegm?
saying? Yeah, you really gotta
I know,
use it
I know exactly
sometimes.
what you're saying, Brenda.
Yes,
Yeah, yeah.
when you don't pronounce a word right, or they do come down really hard. But it was always very discouraging, and I'm not fluent in my language at all, and it sucks. I try. There's some people that are pretty patient with me, but it never really hit me until John Stiffarm came and he talked, and he was like telling us, you just take those
Yeah.
licks, and you go back for more. And that just really kind of stuck with me. I think that was the most motivating and inspirational way to say, just take it if you want to learn it,
Right.
So it's very harsh, and it's very discouraging, and you get embarrassed, and God, it's just rough. But I think as time goes on, and I also kind of feel like people are stingy with knowledge too, and that's kind of like another barrier that's out there, is that people are really kind of stingy with it. And then when you try to expose yourself to it, and when you try to learn it, it doesn't come easy. But as time progresses, I think that they warm up a little bit and it becomes a little bit more natural. I don't know,
Mhm.
so I think that's my biggest barrier, is that I don't want to be humiliated, and
Yeah.
it's just different. And then I think one thing with the language though is like with the language dictionaries that are coming out, because those are pretty redundant around this area. I'm just joking.
That's an IRC word. Bob.
Redundant.
Redundant.
That's an IRC word.
Anyways, so the dictionaries are I just had to throw that in there. The dictionaries though, I feel like they're really, really focused on the structure of a word now, with all the hyphens and where you put it and forming those words. I feel like that's primarily what language focuses on now, and so when you're reading the dictionary, you got to know where that hyphen is and what it means. I mean, don't you? I think you do. I don't know. I always get confused about that kind of stuff. But anyways.
Yeah,
Well,
no.
that's one thing.
Yeah, go ahead, Marty. What?
Yeah, I was speaking about like you were saying, Brenda, with breaking down the words kind of in their syllables and kind of technicalities like that. I think I get confused. I get frustrated. I'm trying to say, I get frustrated when our own people spell our name differently, Apsáalooke, and
Yeah, that drives
it's
Marty
because
nuts.
yeah, well, I mean, there's a developed alphabet that breaks the words down and how you pronounce the alphabet, and it works. And if you write down Apsáalooke with the way the alphabet was developed, there's an accent mark over the not the first A. It starts with A, but then there's a group of two A's within the word, so the accent goes over the first A of those, that double A section of the word, and that's why you get Apsáalooke, where my voice kind of goes up on that Apsáalooke. And not everybody, but a certain app and people put it all over their social media posts, and the E has the accent. And I've never heard anybody say Apsáalooke. Apsáalooke.
Oh my God.
I've seen
you were tripping while you were saying the word.
Dude, I've seen people.
Yeah.
I've seen people put tattoos. They have tattoos that say Apsáalooke
So I mean,
with the accent mark
kidding?
over the E.
Man,
Wow.
that's
So I mean,
that's pretty technical. I'm like, is Is that
Yeah.
tradition? Is that traditional, you guys?
Well, none of this is.
Why
We're on
in
a
the whole
podcast,
fusion?
Brenda.
I know, but it's like the fusion of it, it's pretty extreme, I feel like. I'm like,
Like Brenda feels attacked.
I do. I feel attacked.
But I mean, it's all part of my like kind of concern or hope that our language will be used more by everybody. So having this, we do have a base alphabet that everybody can get access to, whether it be physical copies of books or one of the earlier Crow dictionaries have the alphabet, and at least kind of advertise it more that that's the correct way to spell the word with, and it makes sense the way you pronounce it. But going back to the kind of the previous subject of kind of Crow fluent speakers interacting with new learners. When I was probably a teenager, I came across the word and learned the Crow word for white person, and it was Bashchila. And I said it in front of my grandpa, kind of maybe not really thinking much of it, and my grandpa just stops me and is like, what'd you say? And I said Bashchila, and she's like, that's not how you say it. You say it Baishta Shila. He just kind of said it slow so I could hear it. Baishta Shila, and means yellow eyes, correct?
Right,
Aaron?
right, correct.
Yeah, well, Bob.
But there's two ways to, you were right, Marty. The first way you said it, that's a shortening of the word. And your grandfather said the fundamental, the longer version that has all the different word parts. So that's another thing where you were right. That's a way that most people say it anymore, I think. But your grandfather said the full word.
Saying it that first way, Bashchila, is that what you guys are talking about with slang, or is it a different kind of concept?
Would you consider that slang, Aaron? I just consider that kind of a shortening. Just over time, it is just kind of words grow shorter because it's easier to say. Maybe.
Man, that's tough. I think
say it faster, it comes out. Like
I think the difference between Bashchila and Bashchila is more of a. That's more like. I think it's acceptable. I think it's an acceptable. If it is slang, it's acceptable slang. I would say
the same thing happens with lots of languages. Just things get just more to the vernacular over time. It becomes something that you accept.
Hey, I think the fact that we know the proper way of saying it is evidence that it's still somewhat proper, because we're able to decipher what that word really means, yellow eyes. Now, in another word in Crow that gets shortened down is balachtik. For I don't know, they'll say machtik. And that, I think, is slang. It's like, because you can't, it's not decipherable.
What was the second word? I didn't hear you.
Machtik.
Machtik with an M, not a B.
Machtik, yep.
Oh, wow.
And then they'll even say ma'ishtshira.
Yeah.
For like, but that's just the M and the B are interchangeable.
Right.
But,
M and B. It was kind of interesting because the M and B are interchangeable in a way, but it almost, with that shortened form, it's almost going back to Hidatsa, because Hidatsa has all the initial M's instead of B's.
Yeah. Now we're getting this is inside baseball.
Well, my grandpa said that
my auntie mom my auntie mom told me. Let's hear from Camia. Let's hear from Camia.
Oh man,
Camia.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
All right. I guess I've been quiet because I'm just thinking in like so many different directions about all of this stuff, and that's just because like teaching English at a tribal college is a weird thing, right?
You're the oppressor.
Girl, what are you doing?
I know.
Get her.
I know. Yeah.
Get that.
But
let's get her.
Right? That doesn't really mean though, like, I think that your experiences, like Brenda, like what you're talking about, like I remember that. And I remember there being so much pressure when I was young that like, this is so important. And I kind of think that maybe some of that like defensiveness about you have to get it right is because it's so important. And so you put all the pressure on, the teacher and then the learner, and it just, I don't know, doesn't do anything good, or it doesn't work like the way it's supposed to. So I get that. I remember that. And now as an English teacher, I mean, you guys have all had experiences. Nobody wants to be corrected, right? When a teacher talks to you about like write properly, I mean, I gotta say, didn't that, like, you have negative feelings associated with that? You don't like that. Nobody likes that. And then that whole idea about, these kind of fundamentals first. I understand that. Like, I completely understand that. And I think that that has to do with a lot of education and teaching. But I mean, if we start with like the fundamentals that this is exactly the right way, nobody wants to know that. Nobody's interested in that.
Well, I
right?
think the fundamentals don't necessarily have to be first, but they have to be.
And
they have to be available.
Maybe that's the part that I've had such a hard time with. And that's, again, coming from this area, wanting to learn like my language, like everybody always says, but not ever getting anywhere with that, and then ending up teaching English and still thinking like these issues, this is really, really important stuff, right? But I guess maybe what I'm thinking about is teaching English is like, I know what I've tried to do that really didn't seem to work, that people didn't like, that I didn't like doing. And one of those things is telling somebody you have to. I have a really hard time with that, because there is, like what we're talking about, there's so much language variation, and people are complaining about how bad students' English is. But you know what? English teachers and academics have been complaining about how bad students' English is for like 100 years, if not more. So like, that's not a new thing, right?
Right? Maybe it's English that's bad.
Oh,
But so it's got this thing that's like, all right, so if each generation is changing the language and doing something with it, all right, why is that so hard to accept? And if somebody is like, maybe it's that thing, like the awareness. If you're aware that there's this one way to say something and then another way to say something, and you make a choice, somebody says, well, this is correct. Well, they're not choosing that for whatever reason. So, I mean, I know that doesn't really go anywhere in terms of this kind of conversation. It's just like all over the place. But maybe
that's the quote. I don't know that if this goes anywhere. that quote's awesome.
Yeah.
No, I get it. I see what you mean. And, this is when you're talking about that, this is something that I think is a larger problem in language learning, even aside from the disconnect of making linguistics palatable to local folks. When I look at my brother's dictionary, I think, what is an imperative mood? I don't know what an imperative mood is. I have no idea. And what is transitive pronouns? I don't know. I'm not I'm not educated in that way then I have to get to another layer of learning to really just decipher something that's very simple to linguistics, as far as producing a dictionary. So that becomes a divide in itself. But I think one of the bigger issues is this idea that we're so sensitive to criticism that we feel like if we get corrected, well, we're just going to quit. And you see that in a lot of Native youth. It's this defeatism, this idea that, well, I'm wrong, so I must be a bad student. and I deal with this with my youngest, or with my youngest children, and I don't know where that comes from, because they don't get it here. They don't get told, you're wrong and that's bad. They get told you're wrong because we're going to show you the right way to do it, or how to, being wrong is okay because it shows you something, a pathway to being correct. And they picked this idea up in public school somewhere, where they felt like they're bad at something because they got something wrong, where it's not the process of correcting something that becomes the primary objective of that. So I see a lot of that happening in language learning, this attitude, which I think is not, I don't know where it comes from. I don't know what it's about. But another issue that one of our faculty research awardees was chatting with me about, Aspen. She was talking about the state of language learning here on the res, and how we've been fed this style of learning that really mimics the early childhood type of learning. So if you're familiar with how Salish has been taught here, it's very reminiscent of I don't know if you guys remember the Pug series of books, where you say Sally seen Pug. Pug is Sally's dog.
I think that
And-
was all born out of the bilingual program, wasn't it? In the 70s and 80s.
Yeah, and people don't talk like that. People don't talk like that.
In Crow, it was
at all.
Harold the duck.
Yeah. So
Oh man,
you can say how you feel, but in a very robotic type of, like as if you were reading.
Mhm.
I am angry. I am happy. I was happy. I will be happy.
they are happy.
They are happy.
That might actually be too advanced.
Yeah, but when you listen to fluent speakers, they never say things like that. It's always this very, and I don't know what they call, like a very intransitive type of talk, where there's these long compound sentences that have the tense built into the prefix and the suffix, and so we're getting fed this real kind of babyish type of talk. So, and I think that might be frustrating to the fluent speakers when they hear it. They're like, God, these guys are just sound like a little robot baby.
But also too, what's happening is that some of these people are these elders that were brought in to learn that method back in the 80s and 90s. They're stuck in that method too, though. So there's that. So where when new guys like the Language Conservancy comes in and says, hey, we want to do this, there's some people that don't want to shift out of that, like, well, I've been doing it this way,
Yeah, that's a huge issue. For sure.
Maybe you can speak on that a little bit.
Yeah, speak up, Bob. Let's hear it.
Will could probably, if Will had to go to his meeting. But I do know that we, like I said, I'm more almost predominantly with Crow and with Hidatsa since I've been working here. But we have run across that a lot of times with elders in certain communities. Either they don't want to have a new form of a new method of learning because it's they're used to what they've been doing. Where that comes up more so is in orthographies, especially like competing orthographies or spelling systems, alphabets, and that can be really, really tricky.
Yeah.
Especially if one is, one's been around for a long time, but it's just not very indicative of the phonemic inventory, or just isn't good for like learning. And someone produces another alphabet that works better, but it's just going to be a major battle between the two. And it just doesn't. You need to really have, I think, for any language to proceed and to get reinvigorated, you need to have one spelling system.
Right.
And I know there's people out there that are going to argue with me on that. Maybe not anybody in this
Let
room.
Anybody here?
But,
Let him.
Anybody
Yeah.
here?
No,
yeah,
I think
Marty's going to
the,
argue with me.
Marty.
yeah,
Okay,
Let's argue with them about this.
bring it on, Marty.
I don't want to hear
Yeah.
it. I don't want to hear it, Bob.
One alphabet for us all. One alphabet system, one people.
But
People.
you know, it is definitely a matter of contention. And I mean, I was at a conference a year ago where a lot of I think a lot of people up in Canada, the kind of thing is kind of the term was decolonizing the language. And they were doing dictionaries that had not print dictionaries obviously, but online dictionaries where you could have two different orthographies. And you know, it's kind of cool to think if you can do that.
Yeah.
And it's just a huge technical hurdle, I'm sure, to even try to come up with that. I'm trying to do one orthography, and it's crazy.
Do you think that's...
Yeah.
I don't know how useful it is, to be honest with you, Aaron.
Yeah. I mean, I guess my question in that is that, man, like, I think that could work if you have, like, your, like, tribal, the speaker group is huge, you know?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you have this vast knowledge to pick from, like Plains Cree, right? It's such a big group that, yeah, you could have probably several different ways because your datum is right there, right? Like you can just, so in instances where tribes don't have the speakership, if that's a word, did I just make up a word?
Speakership, yeah. Let's put that in the IRC
Dictionary.
glossary.
It's right next to indigenous and
Indigenous and redundant.
And Apsáalooke.
All together. Apsáalooke.
I thought it was Absorki.
Absáalooke.
Absáalooke.
It's
No,
Absáalooke.
that's not right.
But I think what happens, and Will, if Will here, he was just he was so pissed off about this because he was with me at that conference. He just says this will do nothing for advancing the literacy of the language. You know, you really have to have one spelling system.
See, that makes me that makes me think that concept of having multiple spelling systems is coming from a group of people who have a lot of speakers, because that can you can kind of cheat the system in a way, because you have so much to draw from that you can always kind of bring it back to the speakers, and that can work where you know if the system works is if you vet it against non-speakers, right?
Yeah, you know, it's really it was a battle here with that issue, you know, especially with the schwa, you know, the upside down E.
Yeah, right.
That there was a big battle in, I don't know, the 80s or probably the 80s, whether to drop that schwa or not. And, you know, now there's kind of a push to reintroduce that, but more as a glottal, I think a glottal stop in some manner.
Oh, really?
So what's that?
Bring
glottal
back
stop
the
instead of a
schwa.
schwa?
Bring back the schwa. Say
So
again, Bob. Sorry.
Is there doing a glottal stop in lieu of a schwa, or?
Well, no. I shouldn't even speak on it because I'm not in that circle of learners that are really deep in the linguistics field. You know, I know enough to throw a few terms around, but I'm not sure what the future is for it. But it's been eradicated from our alphabet. The schwa is gone.
I was going to ask, has it just been replaced with an E? Or
no, I think it. I don't exactly know. I wish I had somebody on who did know, but I just know they don't use it in the alphabet anymore. I don't know what replaced it or if anything did. I think it was a glottal stop, if I remember correctly. Yeah. But you know, let's take a little break here. How does that sound, guys? Let's just take a little breather for a second. We'll listen to this next song and we'll jump into this conversation again. You guys okay? Aaron, you all right?
Yeah, we can.
Oh,
yeah, no.
okay, I thought your head was down. That's your praying.
I was making some wishes for you guys, and
okay,
trying to get the schwa fixed, and
yeah. Let's do it. Are you guys ready?
Yeah.
Here we go.
If you marry me, then I will love you. If you know me once, then I never go.
That was a song recorded in 1950, I believe, and that was Louie NinePipe, his brother Adolph, sometimes called Happy, well, usually called Happy, and then Pierre Pichette, and they're singing an introduced song that was came in from the Nez Perce. I'm not sure at what time period that came in, but it's interesting because it's a marker in time, I guess, for those who are into this music and not reinventing, but establishing the history of the changing of songs here on the res. But it's a marker when English starts to become utilized in songs. Of course, you hear it popularized today in round dance singing, popularized probably in the 70s and 60s during the 49 songs. But yeah, it reminds me of another tool that has been used in language preservation and learning, probably more learning, but the use of music to teach the language. But largely here on the res, and I wouldn't say 100%, but generally speaking, the tunes that are used to put words into, especially traditional or Salish words, is generally a non-native tune, such as nursery rhymes or European sounding, not European, but using the standard. I don't know what the scale is called, but just using a standard, largely non-native influenced tune. And I often wonder why that is, but more importantly, I wonder from Bob if your organization there has looked into using songs, especially in a traditional sense, to document and or preserve language.
Yeah, I think we recently did a book with Ben Blackbear, Lakota speaker who's worked with us for decades, on traditional Lakota songs. And we've also done several CDs of Lakota nursery songs, but I think a majority of those are, based on European lullabies.
Right.
There may be some traditional ones scattered in there.
Yeah.
But you're right. One thing I was going to ask you, to kind of counter that, or just to add to it, is how much hip hop is used in Native communities, and how much is used as kind of like almost an accidental teaching tool for language.
Yeah. You see that here, but rarely or very little language is used, mostly because our fluent speaker count here is very, very low, and so the young people who are into that genre of music, they'll integrate words or common phrases into their music, but for the most part, it's.
I was kind of curious because to me, like, especially like the golden age, of hip hop, Brooklyn stuff from the 80s and 90s. It was just so much about language, just crazy, and you could really learn a lot from it. I just didn't know whether that's just something that is just kind of indicative of African American dialect and thought, or how much of that can kind of transverse over to native languages, or whether it just depends on the language or the.
Yeah. I think that's an interesting one. I believe that, if we did have more young fluent speakers, I could imagine that would bleed into that hip hop genre just because it's so popular
And it's
with younger
fun,
folks.
it's fun
Yeah,
and it's
yeah, yeah.
listenable and it's cool, it's not
Hmm.
stodgy. It's just, it
Yeah.
would be a fun way to learn,
I think so, and I think when I made the commentary about the songs, I'm definitely not against any of that. Any tool that's going to help
Well, remember
young
Brenda's
children.
here. Don't offend Brenda.
Okay, sorry.
Thug
Okay,
life.
yeah, that's right. That's right. But I think because a lot of the talk that we've had here on this podcast and the talk we have in the center is about this singing, the tradition of singing, and how important that is to the worldview of Native people, and how the introduction of, or the fusion of, song and language, especially non-traditional song, how that, I guess I wouldn't say how it works against anything, because if it's a teaching language, you can't go wrong there.
Yeah.
But how can we fuse the teaching of and the importance of song and language simultaneously?
So I have a thought on some of this.
Yeah, let's hear it.
What I'm noticing, and I think partly because I'm fortunate, just like you are, Sean Dean and Marty and Cammy, we teach, or we're like in the college, right? So we do a lot with young, kind of 18, 19, 20-year-old Native students. And what I'm noticing with a trend, and even talking to like young Crow people, and when I'm down there, I visit people and kind of get a sense of what I'm noticing is there's a trend right now among young Native people where they want like the real deal. Like they want to learn their histories, like an untainted version of it. So I can see where like using modern pop music to teach language could be useful, but I also can see a large majority of young Native people just trashing it too, because what I'm seeing is they want to know like the truth. Like I even get questions like, I'll tell a little story or something. They'll say, is that like influenced by the church, or like is the church in that? And I'm like, and it makes me kind of think like, oh no, this one, no. And it's really opened my eyes to how people want to learn, and for some reason they're not getting fed that anymore, at least in Crow country. And I know if Crow's not experiencing it, we're in the same boat as everybody else, where I think it seems like young Crow people want to that are interested in culture, they want to learn like the authentic form of it.
Yeah, purists.
Yeah, they're like purists in a way. And so
well, that's cool. If that's the trend right now, that's great.
That seems to be what I'm noticing, because I think there is a movement of young Native people that seem to value like being unique, and there's nothing more unique than being Native in North America, right? Like there's more polar bears that can ride tricycles than us, there's more like there's
what?
there's not a lot of us, there's like
Okay.
that's a Chris Rock saying.
Okay.
It's there's not a lot of us. And so I know even in my own family, I've had nieces and nephews, and they kind of like think like, man, like we kind of missed out. That's the feeling they get, like we missed out. And it's like, wow, it's still there if you guys want it. So then it just seems like they're hungry. So when I start talking about Crow stuff, man, they're like into it, and they want that. They don't want kind of the version that the pop version or the MTV version of, and I don't know why that is, but I don't know if Marty's noticed that down there, but it does seem like there's kind of like this, teach us the right way. Like we want to learn the right way,
Yeah.
So I'm just saying that's kind of the counter to like the, give us the palatable version of it, But why not do both?
Yeah. Why not? Would it hurt? I don't think so.
I just know how Indian country is, man. I just know, like, if you come out with like a hip hop record of native rappers in their language, people are just gonna dog it.
Well, yeah. And
Yeah.
One thing I hear a lot, and I have my own criticisms about it, but it's you got the old people of the generation that I think I'm getting into, where you like these young people and their music, so I see, yeah, that's cool. If you can rap in your language, man, that would be awesome. But I don't necessarily like the lifestyle that it can promote.
Yeah, I think too, language is so infused with worldview and ideology, and so it would be hard because hip hop really is a cultural expression of that lifestyle. So
So if you if you're rapping with a bottle of
what are you gonna say?
I don't even want to say.
Stop now.
Yeah, if you're rapping in the language with some female dancers and a bottle of whiskey in your hand, that's not really what that's not the essence of the language.
No, so I guess I was talking more like the Fab Five, and that I wasn't getting into like bottles,
Yeah.
I think we're losing the point now.
Oh yeah. We drifted. Brenda's gone, so she can't reel us back in. So
Bob, I have a question though, because some of the stuff I've seen with the Language Conservancy is that prairie dog seems to be a kind of a theme, and that some of the illustrations there's a prairie dog or a gopher or something, or what is it?
We have in one of the books that we
the prairie dog goes to school, or
prairie
something.
dog goes to school.
Yeah, and then like the Hidatsa kind of have something similar, right, with like a bear swimming or something, or I can't remember what it is.
Same
exactly.
book.
Black Wolf first.
The what is it? The buffalo.
Yes,
buffalo
the buffalo.
Bow. Right.
Buffalo and the bow.
But that's actually they both were originally Lakota books.
Yeah. So my question is why not take those Crow Old Man Coyote stories, which are real short versions, little tiny short stories, and do that same method?
That would be good. Right.
That way, it still teaches some value of the Crow culture, and it creates.
They're actually doing books. We're helping out with it. We're helping on a technical end, but they're producing 4 or 5 through the college, through Little Bighorn. Janine Pease, I think, was the main person who got the grant money for it, and Linda Pease is doing the illustration.
Yeah, so on the twins. Lodge Boy and Spring Boy,
right.
I heard that. I didn't know that was connected loosely.
And they're doing 3 or 4 other ones too. I know,
that's
people
cool.
Levi and Sean Reelberg helped out with some of the translations.
Yeah,
Tim McCleary.
Of course, Tim's in everything, right?
Yeah, he is.
Yeah, he's legend.
As
Tim.
he should be, I guess.
Yeah.
So.
He's the Trinity Tim. He is the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
He is.
Wow.
I'll let him know you said that.
His crow name is Bach Bosh. And that means holy.
Right.
Sacred. Of God. Anointed. No.
Well, I also have another question for Bob. With your work so far, have you done anything with utilizing video?
In what manner?
Well, I mean, just in terms of like kind of what we're talking about, like doing a rap version of, doing the language in rap to kind of help promote it. Have you done anything with using video to make it more accessible for people? I'm just curious.
We've done like animated versions of some of the books. We did a cartoon thing for Bernstein Bears for Lakota, and we're looking to expand that into other languages. possibly either a Nida or Crow. As far as like straight out video, we haven't done anything, but I'm sure it's in the works.
If you
a lot of the
need
stuff I can't really. I just spend almost every waking hour working on this dictionary, so a lot of stuff I can't really. With some of our other projects, I can't speak to specifically because it's just happening in literally in another room of the office. If Will was here, he could probably, since he's the guy, he's kind of like the puppet master over all the projects. He could probably answer
what
that
would
for
be
you.
cool is to see some really high quality videos of like the lessons. So like lesson 1, 2, 3, or however they're organized, of someone teaching the lesson in really like high quality and with.
So do you mean like someone actually a video of the actual person teaching the lesson?
Yeah, but also with
not
some
something.
like some B-roll of some context being provided to things, and just to kind of keep the brain, the synapses going, but also for someone like me who doesn't speak Crow could like kind of rehash that lesson over and over and over and over, and I think that would be cool. And I'm also kind of like promoting Marty over here because he's an amazing visual anthropologist and creates amazing documentary films. So if you need
any ideas you guys want to throw our way,
I'm his agent.
We'd be really interested in wanting to hear them and trying to expand on them for sure.
So what is your guys' how many people do you guys employ? It sounds like you guys have a lot of things going on.
Sometimes not enough. Sometimes we probably have about maybe 12 to 15 people in the office. And going. We have like a lot of part-time people as well in the office. We have people kind of scattered all over the globe that do work for us now. Like Will's main partner started the organization is in the Czech Republic.
Oh, wow.
He's the one he's probably, I would have to say, linguistically, he's probably the world expert on Lakota.
This is this sounds really interesting. This organization you guys are running, and it sounds like you guys are serving a very important need in Native communities. I wonder what if you could give a self-evaluation, and you used I guess fluency of new learners as a metric. How would you guys say you were doing in that area, or is that not really a fair evaluation?
It's really, I don't know whether fair is the right answer. It really just depends on how long we've been working with languages. I think with Lakota, the metrics are probably pretty good, only because we've been providing materials for them and working with them. Personally, and having these summer institutes and having language weekends every month. For close to 15 years or 20 years. So that makes a difference. We're kind of been on the ground there helping people teach language for a really long time.
So
and I think Crow has all the building blocks there to really push forward with a language program. And I think there's just enough speakers and enough young speakers and enough people with a positive attitude toward wanting to push the language forward. I mean, can be a hurdle in itself because a lot of people are just not that interested.
So has the Language Conservancy produced a fluent speaker?
Yes.
In
fact, we produce probably like 12 a year now in Lakota.
Really?
Wow. That many,
if not more. Yeah.
How do we judge the fluency? Well, what's the metric on that?
Well, we see them. I mean, they go to our advanced classes, so we know their names. It's not like huge numbers. There's way too many that you can't count them. We know who they are. And they're just because they have access to materials that get you to that place, and now it's a whole community of language warriors essentially who are empowered with the language, and they form a clique, and support each other, and it creates this wonderful like feedback.
So like a cohort.
It's a cohort. It moves beyond a cohort. It becomes this like, it's empowering. You get your language back, and you're in a special club all by yourself right then and there. And when other people join it, it's just the coolest thing. Yeah. It's almost like a mafia, actually.
Let the record reflect that Will is advocating for La Cosa Nostra.
No, it's just no. It's kind of it's cliquey, a little bit cliquey, right? To get into the club, you gotta you gotta have the discipline to get to that language, right? Yeah. And that's the barrier to entry. But when you're there, you're a role model in the community.
Man, and how motivating is that?
Yeah.
Because I know I'm not a spring chicken, but I ain't an old man either. So I still kind of know the struggle of doing things by yourself, and you're kind of an island among your friends. Man, if you can get a core group, even two, just another person. Yeah. Man, that's extremely motivating.
That is.
And, think about it. If, that group says, hey, we want an immersion school for our kids, right? They are like the most engaged parents because they're like invested in the language. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And now they're like, our kids are going to be learning Lakota as a first language for the first time ever. And, that's how it builds up. So the long term of all of this is not like just get a bunch of second language speakers. That's not going to save the language. Yeah. The long term is we need to get those young people to have families and then raise their kids as first language speakers because they'll marry each other, and say, we're going to have a household where we only speak Crow, Dene, Crow,
And that
Lakota,
seems to be the case,
is.
right? Like it seems to, it's like like-minded people seem to attract each other. So you have these people who are invested in the language, seem to attract other people who are invested in the language. And
Yeah, no, and you need a long-term way out of this. There's it's got to be beyond just materials. There's got to be a plan. How do we actually bring the language back, right?
And part of that is to create an environment where it's relevant, right? And by creating that cohort or whatever that you can even call them, like that class of people coming up together, man.
But even those guys are isolated, right?
Yeah.
They're like, oh, I live on one part of the reservation. How do I communicate? It's not easy.
Yeah. So maybe in some cases, though, that's where ceremony has always been important because that's always been these vestiges, these little islands of where languages is not only encouraged, in some cases it's mandatory, right? So hopefully language also promotes the use of ceremony too, because it hopefully.
Oh, it does. Oh, yeah. And we're seeing people compose songs now, in Lakota or whatever the target language is.
Yeah.
Writing their own stuff, creating lots of content, and being engaged in powerful ways, prayers, all of that,
So since we'll use Lakota because you've been working there the longest, at what point did you start to see the evidence of your work there? Of the Language Conservancy?
So everything is incremental. You put out a textbook today, you might have, 50 people use it that year, maybe,
for sure.
Right? And in year 2, maybe 100 people. And it just builds off of each of those things. We discovered, for example, that with the dictionary, which is the Lakota Dictionary published in 2008, 25,000 entries roughly. I mean, it's the gold standard for indigenous language dictionaries in North America. It took 8 to 10 years for that to filter into the community. You know what I mean? So that it's like,
so it's normal.
It's normal. It doesn't happen overnight. And you just have to be prepared that, it took 100, less in many ways, 100 years and a boarding school system to eradicate language. There's got to be a lot of time needed to create this giant reform. You're turning it's the equivalent of turning a tanker, right?
Yeah.
And it only happens little by little. And then, but it took us, I would say, we began in 2004 with Lakota, and in 2013, 2014, things were clicking. It takes about 10 years for things to really start clicking. And then it just has its own energy because you're not pushing energy into it. At one point, we're the cheerleaders around the whole thing. And now, it's got its own life. We don't need to do much. People are forming their own Facebook groups. They're doing their own events. They're building their own curriculum. You see where I'm going with this?
Yeah.
We're just kind of priming the pump.
Yeah.
People want language. There's no doubt about that. They are passionate and deeply committed to their language in every way. We just need to give them tools to get there and be successful with language learning, replicating stuff, doing whatever, cartoons, websites. It's the sky's the limit.
Yeah.
It's a giant iceberg of stuff that needs to happen on a language.
See, and already that's what I'm seeing is the biggest difference between the methods you guys are using is you just said the sky's the limit, and in my experience with a lot of other organizations and groups and advocates is that they seem to limit it, to say, no, it's only this way. This is how you're going to learn. And I'm noticing the trend in even how you're speaking and what I've seen and its impact even in Crow, but it just seems like it's like, man, whatever works, that's what we're using, cast a wide net,
Oh yeah. If it's an app that you need or, whatever. And, the language has to have utility for your generation. You have to, it's got to be relevant.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And every language changes too, and I know that there's a feeling like, well, it's not the language that, and Lakota, frankly, is not the Lakota that these second language speakers are speaking is not the Lakota that was spoken 50 years ago. But that's also the case with every language. The English we're speaking right now is not the one that was spoken 50 years ago either.
Mix it up.
But
it sounds like
we need a part two.
It sounds like it. Yeah.
I think we need a part two because the amount of work that the Language Conservancy is doing, you can't just sum it up into one episode of the podcast. I think it has to be at least one more because I still have a lot of thoughts
I got some burning questions about your work, and I think our listeners, especially, the local people around here, they might want to know.
Yeah, man, that's actually
how do we hook up with you guys, and are you a nonprofit, for profit? A lot of questions. I think a lot of questions. Yeah. Well, let's wrap this here, and then let's get these guys back on, and then maybe we can generate some questions from the community in our own special way, which means just go tell your neighbor about it.
Yeah, I think we got to have a part two to this.
Yeah, because, and maybe we can get our one of our faculty awardees.
Oh, I think this is the pod for Aspen because she's so heavily involved in linguistics and language revitalization. I think she'd want to pick the brains of these guys. So
yeah, let's do that. Let's go ahead and wrap this one up now, and then we'll come back and we'll have some more questions if you're up for it, Bob.
Oh, I'm up for it.
He's up for it, and hopefully we won't have a 45-minute technical challenge right up front. So work that out. Thank you for joining us on this episode, and to learn more, you can find us on Twitter and Instagram at IRC_SKC. You can find us also on Facebook and YouTube by searching SKC Indigenous Research Center. You can also visit our website at irc.skc.edu. Don't forget to join us next time as we continue our discussions on Indigenous research, Indigenous research methodologies, and Indigenous worldviews.